Hey,
Happy
Laurie.
Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you. Hey, Doug Smith here, broadcasting from the shores of the Ottawa River. Caught an 8 pound pickerel the other night.
Wow.
Yes, I went out there with my wife Patty and I was trolling, and all of a sudden, 35 feet of water, whap, and she netted it, and we fed the whole family. So it was
Oh,
fantastic.
nice.
Yeah, that
Nice.
was my weekend. So
Living off the land now, are you?
yeah. No, how about you? How are you doing out there in Drayton Valley?
Well, we're doing great here in Alberta, having a lovely stretch of weather. And, of course, our big news was the fire in Jasper, which
Of
National
course.
Park, which now seems to be under control. People will be welcomed back to the community on Friday. So we understand what that feels like because, of course, as you know, we were evacuated last year for 2 weeks.
Yes.
And just imagine moving you and Patty and the dog in with another couple who have three dogs in a little camper. And you know what? We never crossed words. It was
Wow.
amazing. Well, these are friends. They're like our kids, really. They're younger than we are, but and she doesn't have any parents, and so we sort of adopted her as our adopted girl, and her husband works up north 2 weeks and then is home for 2 weeks. So yeah, they live right here in Drayton. So that's who we stayed with.
Wow. So tell me, like people that are listening to the show and watching the show, they want to hear from people who are close to the front lines. How are people doing? Like, really, like how many houses were lost, and what's the state of affairs right now?
Well, in Jasper, 30% of the buildings are burned down. That includes hotels, businesses, homes, um, cars, vehicles, machinery. And of course, the big thing is it's the peak of the tourist season.
Oh,
And
yes.
right. So even though Jasper only has a population maybe of 6,000 people, they had to evacuate 25,000 people because of the campers, the hikers.
And just think of the blast radius, into the places where people were going to go. How many thousands of people would have
Oh,
been circulating through? Like hundreds of thousands, hundreds and
sure.
hundreds of thousands of people
Hmm. Yeah.
have been affected. That's awful.
Yeah.
Do you have a
But
phone going? Do you have a phone going
well,
there?
I've got it hidden in another room, but I should have turned it off, right?
Oh, that's okay. Well, you're busy. You're busy. I'm busy, and we got a busy guy coming on the show today.
Yeah, tell me about
Jeff
him.
Brubaker. So I played from 81 to 92. Jeff played from 79 to 89. So we've come across each other many times before in that other life called the NHL. And a lot
Okay.
of people would know the name Jeff Brubaker, and he's going to share with us his story. And the way that it differs from my story is that my injury ended my career like a guillotine,
Right.
broke my neck and it was over. Couldn't go back to the rink, didn't want to go back to the rink. And Jeff, got out of the game, but he didn't get out of the game. He went into the coaching realm and started coaching. And then, so he spent his time another 20 years almost, in the coaching realm before they sent him to the curb. And then he had to deal with the inability to transition just like I
Yeah.
did, but 20 years later, which
Right.
doesn't make it any easier. So we're going to hear from Jeff and a whole bunch of other hockey stories. He was introduced to me by actually Tony McKegney. A lot of people would know that name, Tony McKegney. He's going to be coming on the show too soon.
Great. All
Yeah.
right. Well, let's not waste any more time. I want to hear from Jeff and all the way from Greensboro, North Carolina.
Hey,
Here
Jeff.
you are. Here you
Hey,
are. Welcome.
thanks for coming on the show,
Hey,
Jeff.
glad to be here, Doug. Hi, Laurie.
Hi, Jeff.
First of all, where did you grow up, and how'd you end up down in the States where you are right now?
Well, actually, there's a good story around that. I grew up I was born in Maryland, and I am actually the first native Marylander to play in the National Hockey League. Uh,
Wow, I
but
didn't.
I and so I'm listed as born in Hagerstown. I remember Hagerstown, Maryland. Now, I remember the first time I played a game in Landover, Maryland, against the Caps. There was a reporter there. I was actually with Montreal at the time, and I barely got off the bench that night. I played about 4 or 5 shifts, but but the trainer comes up to me and says, "Jeff, there's a female reporter out outside that would like to interview you." And I'm going, "What? Me?" Remember back then they didn't have female reporters in the locker room yet.
No.
So if a female reporter wanted to interview somebody, you had to leave the locker room and go out there into the lobby. But there she was, and she said, "Jeff, I'm from the Hagerstown Sun, the local newspaper. Now, tell me, how does a boy from Hagerstown make the NHL?" And I said, "Well, ma'am, I hate to tell you this, but we actually lived in Frederick, which is Hagerstown's #1 rival. We actually lived in Frederick, and when my mother was ready to deliver me, the hospital was quarantined. So they took me to Hagerstown, where I was born, and they brought me home the very next day. And I've never been back to Hagerstown since. And and I didn't start playing hockey until we moved to Michigan when I was 10. So she said, "Okay, well, I guess I made a long trip for nothing."
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so what was your journey to the NHL? Because these journeys are all I've never heard one even similar to the other.
Okay.
So, I just learned something new about you right now. Like I'm so curious.
Here's mine. I was 8 years old. We had just moved to Michigan, and my mother had taken my sister figure skating. She'd taken her skating. There was one ice arena in town, which at Michigan State University.
Yeah.
And my mother had taken my sister skating. At the end of that session, the boys came out in their hockey uniforms. It was time for youth hockey. And my mom saw that, and she drops a dime, calls my dad, "Bring Jeff down here right now." So he brings me down, and they signed me up on the spot, and they put me out there to give me hockey gear and even skates. And I'd never skated in my life. And my first, by the time we got down there, the game was almost over, but they threw me in there, and I got one shift. My first shift, I had never skated in my life, and I flipped and flopped around out there. And then the next, you only played once a week. So the next Sunday, they brought me back, and I actually, got there in time to start the game. And I got some kid hit me in the gut with the butt end of his stick, and I'm lying around on the ice crying, and they crying for my mom. They scooped me up, and I finished the game. And then there was another game the following week, and then the season ended. So, and I could barely skate. So I remember the mail comes, and it's a little card, saying it's sign up time for hockey. "Jeff, you want to play hockey?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Oh, come on, you'll like it. It's fun. It'll be fun." I know. And she was begging me, "Oh, come on. No." She said, she told me later, I tried one more time, and this time you said, "Oh, all right." So we went down, and the first 2 years I played goalie because I couldn't skate, and we were only playing once a week anyway.
Yeah.
So they'd throw me in there in goal, and I'd kind of waddle around, but then it got to be a little bit fun. And then I decided, you know what, I'm not going to be a goalie anymore. I want to learn how to play hockey. So at that point, again, there's only one ice surface in the city. And I begged my mom to take me there every day for public skating sessions. So I learned
Excellent.
how to. Yeah, I learned how to skate a little bit, and I started getting a little bit better and a little bit better, and uh, at that point I really got into it. So we I started going to summer hockey camps. My dad saw an advertisement for some hockey camp, and they actually took me to Toronto for 2 weeks when I was 10. You ever
Wow.
heard of Tam O'Shanter Hockey
No,
School? Okay,
no.
well okay. So I go from playing, 1 hour a week to 4 hours a day in the summer,
Oh,
and that first summer I went for 2 weeks, but after that I was into it, and I would. So my dad would let me. I would make money shoveling snow and stuff, and he would match for every dollar I could make. He would give me $3 or $2 or something. It went down every year, but I started spending my entire summer at hockey camp. So we would, in the local association, we only had, again, it was one game a week, but I'm playing 4 hours a day during the summer, taking Greyhound buses all over the country,
wow.
going to hockey camps, and then we also, we had about uh, uh, maybe a month of outdoor ice every winter, and my friend John and I would get up at 4 o'clock and go skate outdoors for a
Wow.
couple hours,
There can't
and
have been
then
many rinks. There wasn't many rinks around, was there? I
there
mean,
no there no there's only one artificial surface in town, and then the city froze they froze the surface in a park, during the dead of the winter when
the
it was.
cold month that you had.
Yeah. So we'd play for a couple hours before school and 2-3 hours after school until you were just so hungry you couldn't stand it. You go home, But I also played some baseball and football, but I remember kind of when I realized that if I was going to make it in anything, it would be hockey because I remember my freshman year in high school as a ninth grader. I had always been one of the best baseball players in the city, but ninth grade, first game, all of a sudden he posts the lineup, and I'm not even in the starting lineup. And coach, what the hell? I was the first. I was all city catcher,
Wow.
and
So
and he says I'm not even in the lineup. He says, I go, coach, what the hell? He said, Brubaker, you haven't practiced baseball in 4 years. Okay, you go to friggin' hockey camp all summer. You play the first 2 games of the year. You play the last 2 games of the summer. And you're gone at hockey camp all summer, and you're surprised that so what did you think was going to happen? You know, uh, and at that moment I realized, well, kind of, yeah, I haven't. He's right, and that's when I kind of realized hockey was going to be. If I was going to
mhm.
make it at anything, it would be hockey.
Yeah, when the sports intersect like that, there's really tough decisions and difficult parenting that have to be done, right?
Right.
It happened to me too, where they started intersecting and it just, it was impossible. So I feel you. That probably happened to a lot of players that went to the NHL.
Well, it might have, but I'm pretty sure that most guys that play in the NHL would have they made if you played in the NHL, then you made the right choice. Uh, you know,
Yeah. Yes.
and I don't see that many Canadian boys. I mean, there are some major league ball players that come from Canada, but it's tough to play baseball 12 months a year
Yeah.
Do
in
you,
Canada.
yeah. Jeff, do you have family going on behind you or somebody in the room with you there? We're getting some feedback there. We can
Uh,
hear them. We can hear them when you're talking. Are you at
okay.
home or are you in the
No,
office?
I'm actually at one of my favorite uh, spots during the day. So
Okay.
local. I don't know what we can do about that.
That's all right.
It might be a Timmy's, and we're always open to sponsorship on this show. If Tim Hortons is interested, you can get rid of the
Yeah.
fuzzy background and just show us the Tim Hortons sign. As long as
No,
they're going to
I'm not.
send
I'm
us
not.
a check.
We don't have Timmy's down here.
No, they don't have Timmy's.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Uh,
Over to you, Doug. Another
yeah.
question.
Okay.
That's a fascinating. You know.
So then you got drafted. Okay, so you end
Yeah.
up
Wow.
you end up getting drafted in 1979.
Right. Yeah.
And how old were you? Like at what age
I was 20. I had
20 years old. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I was. Yeah, it was a 20-year-old draft back then. You had to be 20, I think.
Yeah, it was 20. So
yeah.
did you go right to the NHL?
No, I signed actually with New England in the WHA.
Okay.
I played a couple of years of junior hockey in Minnesota. From there, I got a scholarship to come back to Michigan State. When I got to Michigan State, I found that it was really a kind of an unfocused program, really going nowhere. I left there, and the Peterborough Petes had been recruiting me. Roger Nielsen.
Roger. Roger was my coach in LA. I didn't know we had that in common. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Roger recruited me to the Petes, but by the time I knew that Michigan State was kind of a dead end for me. And I got back in touch with the Petes, but Roger had already left there for Dallas. But the Petes were still interested in me. I ended up joining them, played a year and a half there, and that's really what put me on the map, is playing in the Ontario Hockey League. And
so you get drafted.
I signed with the WHA.
Yes, like Gretzky. Yeah, that's exactly what Gretzky was doing the same thing as you were doing. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You were with him. Like you must have got to know Wayne too over time. But so you guys took that road to the WHA.
Right. And then the Whalers retained my rights, I guess, once the merger happened. And I started my career in the WHA.
With Hartford, so you got to play with Gordie Howe.
I did, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, one year, right? You would have played 1 year, if I'm correct, with Gordie.
No, a couple. He stuck around for a couple of years. Yeah.
Wow, and he would have been 50 and 51 years old at the time, playing in the NHL.
Yeah. I attended his 51st birthday party.
It always blows me away. He presented me my award for the academic award for the Ontario Hockey League, and he signed it and everything. But I always remember shaking his hand and thinking, I don't know how I couldn't have played against a guy with hands that big, man. His hands were as big as my head.
What a pair of meat hooks he had.
Oh, it was like he was a nature.
They were like paws, man. They were,
So that must have been awesome. And then, so his sons played with him too. So you played with Mark, right?
I played with Mark. I played with Marty.
And Mark and Marty. So Gordie and his two sons playing together in Hartford with you, Jeff, and then Ronnie Francis came along. Were you there when he came along?
I was gone. We overlapped briefly, I think, in a training camp. Okay. And then I was drafted. I went in the waiver draft to Montreal, which was the biggest culture shock I've ever experienced.
Oh well, tell us about that. So you tell us the difference between the two cultures.
The Hartford Whalers, the whole time I was there, when I look back on it, it was absolutely the worst place for me or anyone else to start their career. It was a complete country club. There were, and I'm sure you've seen this, Smitty. There were a lot of guys there that were just, they were happy to be, there. To them, being in the NHL was the end all, the be all, as long as you're there, living the NHL lifestyle. But the practices were a joke. I didn't know that at the time, but and the veterans were not leaders at all. They had, a lot of the people there They had no leadership whatsoever. Uh, uh, I got to Montreal. My first practice, I almost threw up. It was so tough, and I mean, what a shock that was. And I basically crawl off the ice and into the locker room, and
Have a smoke.
I've taken off my stuff. It wasn't that bad, but I've taken off my stuff, and now I'm getting dressed, and and the guys say, where the hell are you going? I go, what do you mean? I'm going home to take the longest nap of my life. He says, oh no, we go. Everybody has to ride the bike for a half hour before you leave. And,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, I mean that they were incredibly well conditioned, and the culture there was incredible. It was all about winning. What can we do to win? And with the Whalers, it was just, what can we do to have fun today? Where are we having lunch? Where
Nobody was watching you in Hartford. Nobody cared about hockey.
No, but no, the coaches were.
They were. Everything was light, laissez-faire, right? And you get to Montreal.
Laissez-faire is a great way to put it. Yep.
And you get to Montreal, and it's like, just the camera. Everybody's looking at everything you do, right?
It was like going from kindergarten to Navy SEAL training. It was,
okay, so playing for the Hartford Whalers in the early '80s was like going from kindergarten to the Navy SEALs. Oh my God!
Well, going from Hartford to Montreal.
From Hartford to Montreal.
That was. I mean, could not have been two more diametrically opposed cultures.
So what happened? So besides getting a nice firm butt and your legs toned up, in Montreal, how was that experience?
They skated me. You're familiar with the term bag skates, right? That was that. Well, that's what it was. It was about a month of that, and then they sent me to Nova Scotia.
Oh, to the farm team.
Yeah, where I finished. But that's where I learned how to play. And,
Yay!
I put together a couple of 30-goal seasons in the American League, and then I got a few more shots with Toronto and the Rangers.
Yeah. So you came up again, and you saw other cultures and the pandemonium that was occurring right in front of your eyes. Nothing you could do about it, right? Because there was always a hoss in the room or two hosses in the room, and they were controlling the whole environment, right? And it was the same for me. So what about Toronto? Like, how was it when you got to Toronto? Like,
well, that was another. Toronto we were actually the worst team in the league that year.
Bad timing.
Yeah. I think we won 20 games. But and again, that's where I started thinking that I might be a good coach, because Toronto had a lot of talent when I was there. But again, there was no clue. The team had no coping skills. That's the job of a coach to kind of somehow fuse into the team culture. Look, there's going to be times we're on the road, we're up 3-2, there's 6 minutes left in the game, and they are charging at us, right? And we've got to learn how to bow up and attack, and not sit back and try to protect the lead that we know we won't be able to. We've got to. This is what you have to do when you're on the road and you're in a tight game, etc. There was never any kind of strategic talk. It was the same old drills every day, and we'd lose because we weren't coached well enough to win. And and then the coaches would, you know, the coaches would sometimes they would just scream until they felt better, but nobody on the team felt any better. You know, and
Oh, I remember those days, man.
yeah, and uh, sometimes, and then they brought in some crazy, you know, some consultant, to lecture about, uh, about what it's like to be a winner and a loser. And
Oh my.
yeah, and it was. I'm just thinking, oh my God, this is just what a shit show this team is. But hey, But again, I was happy to be there. It was better than being in the American League, and I was getting good ice time, and I got a few second stars, and I had a lot of fans uh, would get excited when I hit the ice. I'd run around there, and I'd just run around like a chicken with my head cut off and try to hit guys, and
Oh, I remember. Oh, I remember. I remember that
yeah,
you were part of the conversation before we would play that you would run at anything.
yeah.
So
Let
like
him,
it
and
was
they'd say,
very well known.
leave him alone, let him sleep. Right? Don't
Yeah.
bother him. He's not. I'm sure a lot of people were saying, look, this guy's got 5 goals. Don't worry about it. Just, don't wake him up. Don't let. But I devised a few things. Smitty, you'll love this one. You were a winger, weren't you?
Centerman and a winger. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you understand that, uh, when you're in your own zone, okay, your job is to cover, your point man. All right.
Yes.
Okay. But if the puck is down in the corner, you're going to kind of you're going to slide down to the corner and tighten things up down low. But if the puck slips,
Can you turn that off?
yeah,
There.
it's when the puck goes out to your point man, then you've got to be there, and not let him shoot.
Yeah.
So I would cheat way down low. Okay, I'd leave my man wide open. I did this all the time. I'd leave my man wide open, knowing that if I did, the puck would eventually go to my man, my point man, right?
Yeah.
At which time, and then I learned how to pad myself up really good, including wearing a really reinforced boxing uh, cup, if you will, and all sorts of foam padding everywhere. Okay, and then so I knew the puck would end up on my defenseman's stick, and at the last second, I would slide in front of him and block that shot and look like a hero, and the fans would go nuts.
So you were part of that starting that whole sliding across thing and perfecting that, because they do it all the time now.
Well, I don't think they kept stats, but I would have been one of the leading shot blockers in the league. But nobody knew that I was leaving my man wide open so he'd get the puck, and then I could be a hero and block the inevitable shot. And everyone, oh, look at him, look at him.
What an interesting strategy that is. That's an awesome strategy.
Well, it got me a little bit of attention.
And so Toronto taught you about coaching, and then after your hockey career, where was the last team you played with? Like, what happened on the last day? Like what was that like?
I was 31 or 30 or 31, and Detroit signed me basically as a backup player that they could call up if they wanted to. And they sent me to Glens Falls, the Adirondack Red Wings.
Okay.
And I was kind of starting to slow down, and I had young kids, and now I'm playing. I'm playing with my daughter, my 1-year-old daughter, all day long, and I didn't feel like, after playing with my kids all day long, I didn't feel like fighting, and it wasn't long before I wasn't even playing for the American League team. Detroit had Adam Graves and Joe Murphy and a bunch of really good players in Glens Falls at the time, and now I'm not even playing there. But I got a break. Bill Deneen was my first coach as a rookie in the WHA, and he was the coach in Glens Falls. He was my very first coach, and he was my very last coach. And he gave me a shot. He basically, when he stopped using me as a player, he started using me as an assistant coach. I started doing scouting. I'd go on the road. I was pre-scouting teams for the playoffs. I was helping run practices, and then he got a hernia and could barely walk, could barely skate. Now I'm running all the practices, and I'm pretty much coaching the team. And Bill was in bad shape with his hernia, and he could barely stand on the bench, and he couldn't skate. He couldn't run a practice. So now I'm pretty much coaching the team, and we won the AHL championship.
Oh, what I see! There's the timing. There, hit it out of the park.
Which gave me a credential to be
Yeah.
hired. I got hired by Greensboro in the East Coast League, which was basically a brand new league at the time. And so here I am now, running my own pro team, and we won the championship. We won the league championship. In my first year with coaching an expansion team. I don't know if that's ever been done since.
So you're leading the parade in two years in a row.
Yep.
And so you're like, all of a sudden you're like in almost invincible as a coach, right? Which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then what? Then what happens? What
happened? I had been okay. I kind of just decided there that I said to myself, you've been to the NHL as a player, I'd like to get back as a coach, but from the ages of 16 to 31, I'd lived in 18 cities. So my goal at that, we won the championship. I said, you know what? I think I could settle in here for a while and just live somewhere for a while. And I turned that Greensboro job into a six-year stint.
Nice.
So in retrospect, I should have left earlier while I was hot. The owners of that team took it to the AHL, and the Florida Panthers sponsored the team, and they hired their own coach. So I went and did the very same thing in Jacksonville, Florida. I took over another expansion team in the East Coast League, and we went all the way to the finals that year. And then the following year, I ended up in San Antonio, and I had another real good year. And now I had moved up, and that was I was the coach and GM of an independent AAA team. I built my entire team. I had 1 month. I got hired a month before the season, and built the first place team in 1 month, and was really now starting to get noticed. And then I had a couple of bad years. All of a sudden, couldn't win a game, and next thing you know, when you're on the way up, you're taking the jobs that you want. When you're on the way down, you're taking the jobs that you can get. And just all of a sudden, it just seemed like the magic was gone. I couldn't put together a winning team. And at that point, I just said, you know what? I'm going to move on. I don't need to do that. I don't need to be a slave to this game. I'm smart enough. I can figure out, a plan. and little did I know how tough that was going to be. But I struggled, mightily for a few years.
And what was, when you were there coaching and you experienced such great success, can you point to, why that happened? Was it because the people that were coaching them before were such like idiots, or was it, did you have the advantage of a specific plan or the way that you treat people? Like, what was your secret sauce when you were winning like that?
Great question. It was, since I was my own general manager. I picked guys that loved the game, that loved to live in the minute. Guys that loved to, the guys that loved to play, guys that loved to compete. I liked, tough guys that showed up and played hard. And we always had kind of since we were at the AA level, and although guys at that level have been known to make it up, claw their way up to the NHL, most of the guys, are not going to, to make it to the big leagues. They're maybe a little bit small or a little bit slow compared to the guys, but they're tough competitors. And so I picked guys that were real serious about winning. That, if you were my kind of guy, if you wanted to come and be the best you can be and work hard, but I loved guys that added to the team camaraderie. I loved guys that really loved to band together and be kind of like a pirate ship of a hockey team. And our culture was fun. Because that was something that I knew I had to provide. That gave us an advantage, providing a culture that a guy could be proud of, and where it was not only desired, it was required to be, to contribute every day. You had to not only, it wasn't good enough just to be a good player, you had to be a good guy, and you had to have a positive effect on your teammates. And if you were a guy, I had a reputation for, if you weren't my kind of guy, if you were a guy that was just, say, playing for the money or playing for something to do because it was easier than working, etc., then people pretty much knew that they wouldn't make it on our team. So we had a very active culture of guys that were proud to be, they were proud to be on our team. They were glad to be there, and they realized that they had only so much time left in their career, so they might as well make the most of it. And we had guys that were, I always gave them opportunities to be the best they could be. I would hire a lot of consultants, especially one guy in particular, a guy named Dennis Lane, who was a world champion karate kickboxer guy. And we would, he would teach guys not just how to fight, but to really fight. And and his training was tough, but our guys loved it. And a lot of times, we'd have a tough practice in the morning, but at 6 o'clock at night, you'd see 7 or 8 of our guys at the dojo, doing crazy stuff, just trying to get better. And consciously, it sounds like you wanted people who were consciously wanting to get better. They were aware of what was going on. Getting better is its own reward.
Yes. They
right?
were using it that way. Yes.
Yeah. So, guys that, we would, in our culture, we'd make people, aware, hey, you're not going to be playing pro hockey a hell of a lot longer, so while you're here, let's make something of it. When
I
you're,
Let's
love
get
that.
going right now. We got to get
when you're,
going.
when you're 45 years old and you look back on your hockey career, are you going to, what are you going to think? What are you going to think of yourself? That was,
Yeah.
kind of because, there were a lot of guys that we beat a lot of teams that just didn't have our level of mental toughness.
Last night, Jeff, you are hilarious. I really think you should be doing stand-up comedy,
Yeah.
hockey,
Awesome.
hockey stories. But last night, I have a gathering every Monday night of my cohorts. And we had a lady in from Fresno, California. And she said, I feel like I'm sitting in a room. And this is what you remind me of. I'm sitting in a room. Doug, you're going to love this word. Possibilitarians.
Possibilitarians. Like
Yes. Right.
Yeah,
And
great word.
so, Jeff, that's what you remind me of, whatever, and going after the guys who are passionate. You can't compete with that. That's just the winning spot, the sweet spot. So, but your stories are amazing, and you're making me laugh. And I'm thinking you should do, maybe do a gig. I could help you with that. Do a gig, a stand-up comedy gig on. It's hockey night in Canada. Really? I mean, we.
Yeah, you know who would be great too? You and Tony would be awesome, Jeff. Like to come on.
No,
The two of you are going to come on the show. Yeah.
There's a guy that can tell some stories.
Oh yeah.
Tony's got a few stories.
But it's not the story, Jeff. It's the way you tell it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But, Jeff, it's not the story so much as the way that you tell it. That's funny.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
You had Doug and I in stitches. Did you see us laughing at? You're probably going, "What are they laughing at? That's not funny."
I really wasn't trying to be funny.
I know.
But
That's
it
the
is
beauty
the
of it.
story. The stories are beautiful. Now,
Yes.
now your passion, and I know this because I've caught up with you on a previous call, is the value of the hockey player and the value of the athlete. And you've been spending a lot of time, working on this to be able to impart to athletes that their value is 10, 20, 30 times what they perceive it to be. And this ties into Dr. Laurie Davis's work on self-worth, that there's a huge hole in the professional sports community when people leave the game, where they think they have no self-worth at all. And you're working on that, right? You're trying to share with the business world, how they can leverage these professional athletes to help them in their businesses, right?
yeah, sure. So I went through a period where when my coaching career ended, that now I'm, wondering, what am I going to do next? And I tried a lot of things, and I was way out of my league. I didn't know what I didn't know. I thought I wanted to be a real estate developer, but I didn't have the experience, or the capital to do it. I tried a few other things. I actually, at one point when I realized that, hey man, I got to get a job here. I got to make money. And I thought, well, maybe I could sell cars. I could talk to people. I'll be a hell of a car salesman. And I walked onto a lot twice. I walked onto a lot at 8 a.m. on a Monday, and both times I got hired on the spot. And both times on Friday evening, I walk into the manager's office and toss him my keys and say, thanks for the shot, man, but I don't have my heart in this. And he said, yeah, I know you don't. I didn't sell one car. I never even got a sniff. I remember one dealership. This woman was, she was the she was the supercar sales lady, and there was no concept of like, okay, I get, I'm up next. I get the next person that walks in. It's like it was a free for all. I guess that's the way it is in that business. And I decided once, you know what? I'm just going to follow her around. And when someone comes on the lot and she's about ready to pounce, I'm going to pounce in front of her and
Slide in front of her.
I'm going to slide in front of her. And I watched her like a hawk, and nothing happened until all of a sudden I looked down and I to tie my shoe, and I look up and she's got somebody, and and I said, you know what, I suck at this. I can't do this. I'm not doing it. And so I got lucky, and I got a job working at a gym that basically it was a chain of gyms that they were opening up new gyms all over the state. And I got hired to run one of the ones that was under construction. And I learned that I could do my job in about an hour a day. And I started working on, on other projects. And I thought I tried selling, being a solar energy. I thought would be a big thing. Turned out to be a bust. And there was something else. But then I answered an ad on Craigslist from a guy in Philadelphia. He was a business broker, and he was trying to add to his network of brokers all over the country. And I called him up and said, "Hey, Mr. Hess, I'm Jeff. I'm North Carolina. I think I'd be good at what you do." He gave me, and he said, "All right, we'll give you a shot." And I didn't realize they'd give anybody a shot. Okay, it was. So I remember, the deal was, okay, you put together deals, you find people that want to sell their companies, and then you find people that want to buy them. And then, you do the deal, and then, we split the commissions. And I thought, okay, well, that sounds good. I thought I was going to get all sorts of training, but I got none. But I'm calling the guy every day. What would you do here? What would you do now? I was calling him 2-3 times a day. And after about a month, he calls me and he fires me. He said, "Jeff, you haven't got a deal done yet, and we're going to let you go." And I said, "Well, okay, well," but he didn't realize I was very close to closing my first deal. And I ended up selling a couple of Subway restaurants to a guy a Subway owner in the next county over, and I made $5,000, which was a huge windfall at the time. And then but I'm not. Nobody is training me. I'm just doing what I thought, was the smart thing to do. And I got another deal done, and I made like 10 grand, and I've got another deal done, and I made 13, which, at that time was, I needed that money. So then I started to realize that only then did I start looking at, what am I doing as compared to, I started looking at other brokers and seeing how they did it. And what I realized is that since I had never been trained by anybody, I put my system that I had put together just from using whatever business experience I had and selling tickets and et cetera. The system that I had put together was far more aggressive than what anybody in the industry was doing. I then realized that the state of the industry that I was trying to penetrate was very, very passive. And they relied on a lot of very passive methodology. And the whole industry was dominated by 4 or 5 guys that were all operating out of the same playbook and just copying each other. And so I started, and then I had some epiphanies, and I remember one of them, was still that was basically when I really started to turn things around, when I realized that I had been hired to sell a drugstore. A guy, an 80-year-old pharmacist, was looking to sell his drugstore, and he gave me the opportunity to sell it for him. So
Wow.
I went to his store and I looked around. Okay, great, and got his financials and everything. But now I'm paying attention to the drugstore industry, and I walked into a different store and I noticed some similarities between the stores, which were namely the signs hanging down from the ceiling, like aisle 1, toothpaste, aisle 2, toasters, whatever. And, at the bottom of the sign, there was a slogan, "Your Good Neighbor Pharmacy." And I asked the pharmacist, "What does that mean?" He says, "Well, that's a slogan from our supplier." Oh, okay. And I realized that the other store had a different slogan. I said, "Well, what if your slogan was this?" He said, "Well, then that means you're supplied by AmerisourceBergen. Our supplier is Cardinal." Said, "Oh, okay." The light went on. And I looked up, actually, Cardinal was the supplier that did not have that account. And I looked them up and I found out they were in Columbus, Ohio, and I called their switchboard and I said, "Hey, I'm selling a drugstore down here in North Carolina. You must have accounts down here. And if you do, and if one of your clients, buys my store, your bottom line will go up 2 million, and or your top, you'll get 2 million in top line new income." And she said, "Okay, that's interesting, sir. Let me take your name and we'll call you back." I forgot all about it. 4 days later, the guy calls me, and he says, "Hey Jeff, it's Doug from Cardinal. What can I do for you?" And I told him, and he said, "Oh, hell yeah! Call this guy. Never mind, I'll call him for you." And that was the beginning. That was an epiphany that that I've kind of built a business around. There's always somebody that has an incentive to help you succeed. Okay, and so it's not much later. I'm sitting in a little attorney's office at a closing in Virginia, and I realize, I'm not the only guy making money here today. And at that moment, I realized that everybody associated, when a business changes hands, everybody associated with the buyer is a winner. Everybody associated with the seller is a loser. On that particular day that in that attorney's office, the buyer's supplier gained a $10 million account. The seller's supplier lost a $10 million account. The buyer's bank gained a $10 million account. The seller's bank lost a $10 million account. So did the attorney. So did the accountant. And so there are huge winners and losers every time. And I said to myself, we can use that as a strategy. So, that was just one of the many epiphanies that I had.
We're going to have you back to continue that amazing story. Like it's phenomenal because you realized how that whole mechanism worked. because probably your hockey days. You know, you're a brilliant guy, Jeff. I mean, the way you boil things down, the way you look at things, how you know, see who the buyer, the seller, the who's making it's absolutely phenomenal. Let's have you back on with you know, maybe in a month after we have Tony on, we'll have both you guys on, because and then Laurie and I mean, we just laugh the whole time anyways, because the stories are true. You can tell they're coming from the heart. So stay that way, man. Stay that way. You know, it's really nice to hear you tell these stories in that way.
Okay, well, I enjoyed it. Are we at the end of the?
Yeah, well, as the co-host, you know, the second person on the ladder, I get to do all the dirty work. So now I get to say, time's up. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
And we need to wrap up. So, Jeff, it was a real pleasure having you here today. And I also do some other shows as the same network, and Doug and I work back and forth. But I also broadcast 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. And certainly I'd love to have you and Doug come and join me on one of those shows, and Tony or whatever. But there's a lot of crossovers here because we have a pretty brilliant marketing plan too, I think. So
Yeah.
Love to share more of you.
Are you rolling out your? Are you looking to gain a larger audience with your podcast?
Every day.
Okay.
Well, as a matter of fact, Doug, I was asked the other day by our esteemed leader, you know, so what's your goal for the shows? I said, well, I've been broadcasting as a hobby for 25 years, besides running my business, but I love it. I'm passionate about it. And I started out on a golf show, 3 minutes. And so he said, what's your goal? I said, well, my goal is to get picked up by a big network. Because Larry King's gone, Barbara Walters is gone, Dr. Ruth is gone, Sue Johansson is gone. You know, all these people that I mentored from, you know, that I watched and learned from. So I was thinking about starting to wear a female bow tie, and some suspenders. Maybe I could be like the female Larry King, because that's the way I like to do an interview.
That would be interesting. I think the female.
You think I'd be okay with that?
No, but I like the bow tie and the suspenders.
Yeah, and the suspenders.
That would be unique. That would be.
Like,
that's brilliant.
Larry and Laurie, what can I say?
I love it.
Okay. So we'll talk, and I just want to thank you, Doug, for you're just such a great host, and thank you for sharing.
That was so much fun, Jeff. That was so much fun. We're gonna have some more fun with this, and get some players understanding, some former players understanding what their self-worth is. You know, let's make that our goal, okay?
Yeah. We really didn't. I mean, I have a whole another section on that.
We didn't have time.
Talk about some other time, but when you talk about the net worth of an ex-pro athlete. Unless if you're Tom Brady or Wayne Gretzky, your name is worth quite a bit. But you know, and for an average retired player, you know, you're a fun guy with some great experiences and some great stories. But it's tough to, you know, you can't monetize that. But,
that's right.
But when we band together and pool our collective resources and our collective networks, we have the most powerful network on the world that's never been activated.
That's correct.
That's what we're doing. Okay.
Great.
We have tremendous value as ex-pro athletes. We have tremendous value to some of the richest investors in the world because we're well known. We have connectivity, and for all the billions that they're managing, they're still nameless, faceless suits. So we're building a business that connects supply and demand, using what we have, which is the brand loyalty of the teams that we played for. We can talk about that.
Beautiful. That's going to be the subject of our next show together. Because that's what we're going to talk about. Thank you, Laurie. It's always great. We'll be talking to you soon. And Jeff, thank you again, Jeff. Wonderful.
My pleasure, Doug, Laurie.
Thank you.
See you later, guys.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.